Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. I'm Hannah.
I'm Anuli.
And as you can see, we're in a little bit of a different setting. Um, we finished school for the summer, and so we'll be doing our podcasts and videos like this from now on, or
Yep.
until who knows when. So just
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Till the end of time.
Till the end of time. So today we're going to be talking about like getting good grades. Are they necessary? What is a good grade? How do you get them? What are some study habits? And we're doing this topic because right around this time, you might be getting back your final grades and maybe deciding whether you want to pass fail these courses, especially with the coronavirus going on. And maybe you want to decide that you want to improve your grades or try to maintain those grades for next semester. Okay, so first we're going to start off with why get good grades.
Mm-hmm.
So, Anuli, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that our capabilities are based on such a wide spectrum, and your grades are only a tool to recognize where your capabilities lie and what your abilities are, but they're not the only thing that determines it. So as much as I keep saying, oh, I definitely want good grades, I'm not going to only base my entire life on that, So are they important? Absolutely. But are they the only important thing? Maybe not. So what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As we've said before on a podcast episode, I don't remember which one it was at the moment, but we were talking about how you could have like a 4.0 GPA, but that really doesn't say anything about who you are as a person, because that grade could have come quite naturally, and maybe you just are great at those subjects that you've taken, or you've worked really hard for it.
Right.
But either which way, like that's not going to be translated on paper on your resume when you're applying to graduate schools or jobs or whatever it is. I think it's also important to define what a good grade is. So what do you think a good grade is?
I personally don't think that it's a specific letter or numerical value. And here's why. I think, and my dad would always say this to me, is that when you look at a grade or when you look at a number that is supposed to represent you, do you feel satisfied is the most important question that you need to ask yourself. Because if you've given it your best and I've worked nights and days and I've burned the midnight oil, and here I am, giving it everything that I can, and that's the number that I'm looking at, like there's a certain level of satisfaction. And if you think that when you look at a grade, you're like, oh, all I had to do was work a little harder and I would have gotten a better grade, then maybe that's not your best grade, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I think also it depends on where you're at in your academic career, and it's the expectations you have for yourself. If you just really want to make sure you pass and that's satisfactory for you, then that's satisfactory to you. You have to think about what else you're doing. I mean, sometimes I would get a grade I wasn't satisfied with, but I put it in the context of everything else that I was spending my time on for this semester. I knew I wasn't fooling around the whole time. I was like doing really great things with my time that wasn't studying. And but put in that context, I was like, okay, because I was doing all of these other things, I can accept this grade. But if I wasn't doing that, then this would not be acceptable.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is something that we talked about in our previous podcast, but if you don't necessarily have your ideal grade, then what else are you doing to make up for it? It depends. Again, there is no specific getting an A is the best thing in the world, because then grades are, again, they're just a number, but are you also building on yourself, your skills? Are you adding value to your life other than just a number? That is also another important thing to look at.
And also, even if you're just about to start college or you're still in high school, whatever it is, or maybe you are in college, think about your next steps, and anything that you want to be in the realm of possibility, take that into account and look into that. Even if you're a freshman in college and you don't know if you want to go to grad school or not, but if you want it to be an option, go to just a couple schools that you would consider if you were to go to grad school, and look at what the minimum GPAs are to get into those.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, at the end, like in your senior year of college, realize, wait a minute, this is actually something I want to do. Yeah. Like, I didn't know that these past 3 years were going to take me the way they did. And now but if you get grades below the averages that the school will accept, then you're going to have kind of missed that opportunity. Right. And of course, there are always times that, you know, you can get in with the GPA that's below what's required. Again, it's about what you do in that time. And don't make it so hard on yourself if you know that you could have put in that little extra work and left this opportunity open for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, like, with schools, especially in the US, that I can speak for, is that they tend to look at your application holistically. Is that a word?
Yeah.
So they look at everything, you know, it's extracurriculars, like what have you done apart from just that number? And again, like if your number is on the lower level, then what have you done to make up for it also, you know? So at the end of the day, I think people are just looking for people that are not lazy, like students that have passion and fire and they're hustlers.
So now that we've discussed the grades themselves, we can talk about how to get them or maintain them. So what are some study habits that you have found helpful in achieving your academic goals?
Well, for me, it's been a lot of like trial and error with like what works for me, what's studying and what not. And it actually, I don't have like a specific routine. It mostly depends on my mood. So if I feel like, I just like, you know, those moments, especially where you're like, I really don't want to do anything all day. And how you tackle those moments is what I've heard defines your life ahead. Listen to music sometimes when I'm studying, and that's specifically in moments where I'm like, I really don't want to do work. And what's the small thing that's probably going to push me in a better mood so I'll be okay to do work is probably listen to music or probably have something playing in the background. But there's also times where I'm like super hyper focused, and then I'm like, you know what, this is my time. And you know when your body's ready, when your mind is ready to like take all this information in. And you just know. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to put everything away, all of my phone, no music. And I'm like laser focused. And even if it's only for an hour, like I'm surprised at how much I get done usually. So I feel like just like gauging where my mind is at and figuring out how to work around it works for me. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a couple of different things. And to this day, I'm still learning how to study. For me, oftentimes it depends on the subject. So for like bioanthro that we both took, for me, I need flashcards to study that or to just read the textbook. But for a political science class, I might need to watch like YouTube videos of different professors or different like people describing the same subject and hope to stumble across a video that put it in a way that I can understand.
Right.
Or oftentimes also it's giving like these political theories a historical context and see, oh, this is where that plays in and these are how these connections are made.
Right.
Also something I learned studying abroad last year, a really good way. Okay, so the school system in the UK, as I learned last year, at least in like political science, your exams are just in-person essays. So you sit down, you have like 6 questions and you have to choose 2 of them, for example, and you have to write a full 2 essays in the 2 hours that you have. And when I was studying for that, what I found helpful was writing all of your notes and eventually breaking it down that you could just look at one flashcard and have all of your notes, and you can remember that and know everything that you're going to say just on that one side of like that flashcard.
Right.
So if, say, the thing that you need to study for is something that you just basically have to memorize historical things or things like that, or it's going to be a lot of writing, try and synthesize your notes to the size of one flashcard. And that practice by writing it and trying to see where you can cut out the details are going to help you remember what's most important.
Right. Oh, I like that. That's actually a really good point. And like one thing that struck out when you were talking about your study habits is how like you like to use flashcards. And
Mm-hmm.
I can never, ever, ever use flashcards
Why
for I
not?
don't know, like even if I was pushed to use flashcards, I would definitely, that's like one thing that's definitely not my way of studying. And
Mm-hmm.
like for me, I like to go over the material at least like twice till I'm comfortable with it. Um, and I know like that's probably a little extreme, but that's how I've always done it. And like in high school, because we don't have as vast as material as we do now, so I would like take notes, careful notes for every paragraph, and like almost memorize them, like understand them and memorize them. And like that was my way to go. And then in college I was like, wait, what? Like I'm not gonna memorize a whole book, like there's no
Yeah.
way, it's a big book. So that, and again, like this was years and years of figuring out how I learned, but with that then came where I learned to pick and choose like the most important stuff out of every paragraph. Now, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna, you know, memorize and understand all the background information. Like, sure, read through it for clarity, but like, don't waste brain space on it. You know, like, there's always one or two most important points in every paragraph that you have to pick on. So I usually like write them down in a notebook, and then I like understand and like memorize everything that there is to about it, and then I write it down in my own words in my notebook. So that kind of helps me understand it better, memorize it better, and then you know it's more about like also having confidence when you're in the exam hall, and like you know you've
Mm-hmm.
done it quite enough, so like there's no doubt at all. So yeah, that's something
Yeah.
that really works for me.
And when you're trying to figure out, because a lot of times you'll ask a teacher, like, okay, so what do we need to know? And they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, only like the important things. And then you're like, well, what's important? I don't know what's important.
All
One way you can,
500 pages of it, Hannah.
yeah, exactly. Like, or they're like, everything's important. You're like, everything
Yeah,
possibly cannot be on the exam.
yeah.
Um, but you can go to their office hours and ask, what is it that you want us to take away from each chapter or from the
Mm-hmm.
lesson that we're learning? But also see where this can be applied in other things. If you have a problem memorizing something, see where it fits into an issue that you're passionate about, or find an issue that it comes across and that you're passionate about. So I don't know much about like the hard sciences, but say, you're learning something about cells or whatever, but you can never remember how cells work,
Yeah.
then maybe put it in the context of, I don't know, like cancer cells or
Mm-hmm.
cells, what is the stem cells, or try and put it in that
Right.
kind of way so that when you're in the exam hall, you can be like, oh, I remember that because when it works this way in cancer cells, so it works
Yeah.
this way in these cells or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
but okay,
absolutely.
so do you go to professors' office hours for help with your academics ever?
Okay. For sure, definitely. I think professors' office hours are really important because then you get like the behind the scenes information is what I think. Like, sure, you can tell me all there is to tell about a cell, and you can, you know, throw all of these scientific facts at me. And then when you go to a professor's office hours, they're going to be like, hey, but fun fact, did you know this? And then that helps you make a little bit of a stronger network in your brain when you're, you know, when you talked about like connectivity and, you know, how you connect the dots and you try to understand it better. You use relations and, you know, with cells and cancer cells and other kinds of cells. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like that definitely helps with the connectivity and strengthening that connections that you make in your head. So in an exam, you know, you could just be like, yeah, I remember this because, you know, we talked about this, but then also I use that information in my head and now it's there. So I know how to deal with this problem.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, I go to professors' office hours like whenever I can, and even if I say don't really have a need to go to the office hours, um, then definitely I'll like be in touch with them over email, even if it's just maybe like to clarify something that doesn't really need much clarification,
Mm-hmm.
just so they know, like they see that
Yeah.
I'm a familiar face, asking questions in class, or participating in class in some way, at least at least once a class. At least once a class. I mean,
Yeah.
when I'm in a big lecture hall, like sometimes that's just not really possible because why would you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also like sending them emails and try and make your profile for your email like have a picture of you in it. So that way when you send them the email, like they've seen your face and everything and they could put a name to your face
Oh, that's a good
in
point.
general, you know?
Yeah.
But also it's good because they can help you out in the future, of course, with letters of recommendation. And also if you want maybe to get points back on a test or an assignment in the future, you'll both be more comfortable perhaps with each other. You'll be more comfortable asking and knowing where the teacher is coming from when they decide to or not to give you back points. I mean, I know for some of my professors, they're like, if you don't come to office hours, then you cannot ask for points back because that would just be like a little ridiculous. You know what? Like it really weeds out the people who are taking the class seriously,
right?
And maybe the people who don't, because even if you do take it seriously but don't have the time to go to the office hours, there are always other arrangements that can be made, emailing the professor and setting up outside appointments.
No, absolutely. I think that's actually a really good point. Yeah, no one really brought that up in my 4 years of college. No one said put a picture to your email so they know who you are. That's actually a really smart point.
That's like something I had to find out just because like it worked once, like in the early days when I used it, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I remember, like you emailed me, and I was wondering how do they know that. Like when I went into the office, I was like, how did they know that it was like our appointment though? You know what I mean? It could have been I could have been a random person just stopping by for a walk-in, but because of the thing, so that's how I figured that out.
Oh, that's smart.
But so what do you say to people like take it seriously when teachers say come to office hours, or do you find that sometimes like it's not like necessary, even like just to make yourself known to them, or is it usually like whenever you have something going on that you need to talk to them about?
I probably haven't just like ever, at least I don't remember going in just to introduce myself and to get things going, but I've always gone like fairly early in the semester, like within like the first 2 weeks, you know, and there's actually material. And then like I can also ask them questions while I introduce myself. But yeah, so I feel like I've never like just gone to like introduce myself. Have you?
I haven't, but that was I mean, okay, and not to introduce myself, just so I have something to say. That's when I'll go to the office hours and ask, what do you want us to take out of this class or out of this book or this chapter or this section?
Right.
So I might not necessarily have a problem, but I do want a reason to go to them. I don't want to just be like, hey, I just thought I'd come say hi.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure they'd appreciate that too, but like I would feel kind of awkward doing that. So that's when I would go and ask, what are you looking for out of this material?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they aren't ever asked that. Like I've had them tell me, oh, nobody's asked me that yet. Everything, and I'm like, okay, well that wasn't helpful, but you know.
That definitely is a great point. Yeah.
And you don't have to go if you are going to be vocal in class too, because then it's like that's might be overkill.
Yeah, I feel like again, like with everything, it's just figuring out what works for you. You know, it's really like figuring out what you want and what kind of a state of mind you're in. If you feel like going to office hours and like talking to them face to face helps you the most with learning and like with the whole experience with being in class in general, then go for it. You know, and if you feel like your whole objective is to just be conspicuous and make sure that you're seen, so you know they know you're here, you're taking it seriously, then again, like being vocal in class, like you said, might be sufficient, and you don't have to like go all the way to office hours to figure your life out or whatever. But yeah, again, like it just boils down to whatever suits you best.
Yeah, and you don't have to be going to because like your purpose is grade related, because you even if you have perfect grades and you're like, well, I don't really like need to figure anything out with them.
Yeah.
Grades aren't everything, remember. Whether they're good, bad, or somewhere in between, you need to have those other personable skills and connections.
Absolutely. 100%. I feel like we talked about grades a lot for sure, but like one important skill that comes with everything is adaptability and flexibility, right? Because even to get good grades, you need to be flexible with everything. Like no two classes can use the same kind of studying, you know? Like my science classes, I could go on and on with like how many times I read them over and all of that. And then there's some classes that need a little more of critical thinking than they need scientific hardcore facts, you know? And for that, I might have to alter my way of studying. If I continue to go and only read and read and read and then understand and read and understand and then not really think about it, like, is that really going to help my critical thinking class? Probably not, right? So like that's one soft skill that's really important to pick up for all the high school kids out there that are going to college and all the college kids too. One important thing that you have to pick up in college is flexibility, not just with grades. Like we're talking about grades right now because that's what this podcast is, but like with everything, just be flexible, be like that.
Yeah. And some of these things like essay writing and proper grammar and critical thinking, you may not have necessarily been taught in high school. It's one of those things that you might be learning through trial and error. I remember in my global studies class, we read like an article and it was like talking about this little boy, and the teacher said to the boy, all right, everybody, all right, class, like I want you to think about whatever. But the little boy was like, what does he mean think? Like think?
Yeah.
Is it looking up at the ceiling? I see everybody else doing that, or like kind of tapping their their forehead about it. Like what does that mean? Think. So when it comes to like how to write, or how to write a critical analysis essay or whatever, that might come through trial and error. For me, I know it has. Whenever most of my assignments and things I get graded on are essays.
Yeah.
So whenever I get like a bad essay grade back, I try and make sure that's the last bad essay grade for this class for the semester.
Yeah.
I'll look back and say, okay, like when I'm writing my newest essay, all right, what did the teacher say I need to change? What is it that the teacher is looking for in the prompt and whatever, and try and apply that to my next essay. So have you ever gotten a suboptimal grade, and what did you do about it, Anuli?
I love that term so much, suboptimal. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's college. I'm pretty sure everyone has. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, for sure. I'll actually a lot more than I'd care to admit. But I feel like you said, going back and picking on those points where you could improve. And also like going back and thinking about how you worked for the essay, like, was it, I don't know, stay up all night one night and do everything, or did you plan it out carefully? And I don't know, like it's just reanalyzing everything that you're trying to do. So like I'll give an example of my history class that I had to do an essay for, and then I had actually like carefully planned it out and everything. Like I wasn't like doing it overnight or anything, but I realized that in the end, it was all like very factual, right? It was just like, oh, this is that paragraph, and I like wrote about it. But I feel like when I look back on it, there was not a lot of like critical thinking involved, And so like picking on those parts, and my next essay, I killed it. Stop. Yes. Stop, everybody, stop. But my next essay was when I killed it. Now, of course, like I had to go meet with the TA and be like, okay, like I get what my, where I'm lacking, but like where else am I going to, what else can I improve on and everything. So again, like revisit your work and see what needs more work and put in that amount of effort in it. And also, if you have professors or TAs that are willing to, TAs, teaching assistants for people that are watching everywhere else. But yeah, for people, that have professors or teaching assistants that are willing to help them out, seek that help, because they're here for you. They're here and they have office hours for you. So go to them, talk to them about it, tell them you're disappointed, because obviously you are, you should be. and then, you know, talk to them about it, and they're definitely gonna be able to figure a way out for you.
Yeah, it's always best to see how you can improve on that past grade instead of being, of course you might be upset about it in the beginning, but don't hold on to that anger and try and force a good grade with the same effort that got you that initial grade. That's not gonna work. You have to take it and learn.
Because grades aren't everything. There you go.
And so, Anuli, have you ever been a TA?
I have. Yep.
So how was it from a person who grades? I've also been a TA, so I could talk about it after as well. But from a teaching assistant's perspective, or as a grader's perspective, what are you looking for? How do you feel about when people ask you questions, and what do you wish more people did?
Okay, so I have a really funny story with this, right? So I would always like, before I became a TA, and I became a TA pretty early on, like probably my freshman year, second semester, or my sophomore year, first semester. But it was pretty early on in my college career. And before that, I would like really shy away from asking my TA questions, right? Because I was like, I don't want to bother you. I'm just going to go home and Google it because, you know, I wanted to not like bother them or anything. And then when I became a TA, it became my absolute favorite thing in the world to see people actually be interested and ask questions. Like when people ask intelligent and smart questions, and every question is a smart and intelligent question, obviously, but when they ask questions, I was just like, wow, you're amazing. Like, yes, ask me more. And it just got me so happy. And I was like, why did I shy away in the first place? You know, I was like, I love when people ask me questions. I love seeing people that are interested because I'm also interested in the same material. So it also leads to that connection that you can form. But yeah, what about you? What have you been your experiences with being a TA?
Yeah, so I was also a TA first semester, sophomore year, and then I was a TA again this past semester. But I also love when people show interest in the subject. Like, you could say anything. You could come to me and be like, I literally have no idea what's happening. Yeah. What is the name of this course? And I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked. Like, I'd love to break it down with and for you. Like, please, you guys, TAs, I don't know about professors because they might have like more of a workload, but as TAs, like, literally anything we'd love to hear from you and for you. Otherwise you wouldn't do it. If you're getting credit or paid for it, there are a lot of other ways you can get credit or get paid for doing something, but we choose to be a teaching assistant because we're passionate about this subject and we're passionate about helping you. And when it comes to grading, don't think that maybe a teacher has it out for you. I mean, at least when I've been grading, it's like, of course I don't take the person into perspective necessarily, but I'll notice themes like, oh yeah, so-and-so is a business major, so okay, that's interesting from this business perspective or whatever perspective that is, but that doesn't change the standard.
Right.
I am seeing your different perspectives, especially because as a teaching assistant, it's like you're not much older or younger than the people that you're going to be like receiving assignments from. Right. So you might be hanging out with them at lunch or whatever. So you might see like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know that person is interested in this. Let's see what they have to say about it. But it's never like, I have it out for so-and-so, I'm going to like fail them. Like, no, of course not. Everybody's held to the same standard. What has been your experience?
I was like, wait, what? Was I a harsh grader? Is that what you were asking?
Oh, were you a harsh grader? Like, what do you think about it?
Okay, all right. I wouldn't say I was a harsh grader, but I feel like I definitely used a student's work for context. So if it was an essay and it looked like it had a considerable amount of effort put into it, and then they messed up on this one part, I'd be like, you know what, it's okay. Like, you put in so much effort. But if the whole essay was loosely written and I was like, did you read it at least once when you were writing it? Like, what? And then that's when like the whole thing comes in. And then I've had people, you know, reach out to me when, you know, they were not graded as well as they hoped for. And I've always been very open, and not to obviously toot my own horn, but I've always been open for them to come talk to me about it. And make time for my own schedule to meet up with them and be like, okay, here's, what maybe you could talk about. So for like picking up their research topics or whatever, like, here's, what you have, like, what are your pros for this? What are your cons for this? Like, what options do you have within this realm? And like help them figure that out. Or maybe if it was an essay, like, here's what needs more work. Like, here's what I want to see a lot. And as from the perspective of a TA, it was never any kind of like hostility, like, how dare you question my grading, or like, how dare you not know this, like, we're all figuring things out. And the fact that we're also students and we've been in the same exact place, like, we know we're lost. Like, I've graduated and I'm still lost. So so I feel like it's so common to be lost. Like, you could walk in a class and you'd be like, what class is this? Like, did I register for this class? What was I thinking? But yeah, so I feel like from one like student TA's perspective, like, I feel like, it's an open field, shoot any kind of questions. There's no kind of judgment, because no one here is like, I don't know, a rocket scientist. So.
Yeah. And also know that people who are, I guess, creating assignments and everything aren't trying to trick you. I'd say more challenge you, because I've had professors be like, oh yeah, it's like kind of a trick question, or kind of trying to trick you or whatever. But now, and in the moment I was mad about it. But this past semester, as a TA who's had to actually like write the quiz questions and everything like that, nobody's trying to trick you, but rather challenge you. So when I was writing quiz questions, I would like ask for answers to be from somebody's actual like perspective, and put our readings into context of something that they're studying outside of class, or something they're interested in outside of class. And I think we're always also trying to be fair. I worked with another TA, and we agreed, okay, we're each going to basically write half the quiz, because I didn't want to seem like all of my quizzes were harder than the other section's quizzes, and that would be unfair, because at the end of the day, it's all under the same class. So we like would all work together to make sure that it was balanced as evenly as possible.
Yeah. So that's a great point that you brought up, definitely. And my question to you is, do you feel like you have specific environments or specific times of the day that you work best?
Oh, yes. I actually wanted to ask you this earlier too, but I completely forgot. So I think it obviously depends on what's available. I'm home now only after I finished, we finished our classes and everything, because I knew I would not be able to study at home if I left campus. Or for me personally, I prefer studying in my room, not necessarily the library so much, because I like to be able to have my snacks within reach and not like worry about forgetting my highlighter or leaving my stuff to go to the bathroom. But also, last semester when I was studying somewhere else, like, the library was a great environment for me to study. They had like a hot water station for your tea, and the cafe downstairs was like really close by, and it was just I loved the environment. They had a great view, so I was in the library every day for hours on end. But when I came back to the US, I was like, I have to be in my room. And like for studying with people, I think it's the best like once you have a little bit of a grasp on, at least on what you can have a grasp on, and then go to studying with people when you want to reinforce that or clarify something that you're unsure of. But not just, I wouldn't start off there. What do you think? What about, what's your ideal study environment?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. I feel like for me, it depends, Wiley, because I thought before this that I definitely could not study with family around. And then so I would be in the library for hours. And then, over my college years, I figured out that I definitely cannot study in my room either. Like, I have to be around other people that are studying. Like, I have to be around other people that are doing the same thing that I'm doing, but not studying with them, but just being around them, getting that vibe. So I would be in the library for hours before, school closed down. And And then after school closed down, I was forced to be in my room the whole time, right? So I was like, oh, it's going to be a mess. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then, of course, there was a lot more procrastination than usual than when I would be in the library. But like one thing that I realized really worked for me with procrastination, and we're probably going to try to do a podcast about this because I've realized a lot of things. But one thing that really struck me is understanding how my brain works, or how the brain of any procrastinator works, right? Like, you are going to hang on to every little piece of excuse that you can use to not do what you're meant to do. So if you're just sitting on your bed with your phone and you're like, oh, I should get studying. Oh, but wait, so now I have to get my books out, get my highlighter out, get my calculator out. Like, oh, it's an ordeal. I'd rather just sit on the bed, as opposed to, what if you were able to lay everything out beforehand and then be like, okay, well, everything's out, and then I'm on my phone right now, and in 5 minutes I'm going to get studying. So when you put your phone down, you have everything laid out for you. So you're like, all right, let's start. What's stopping me? Let's start. So that took me a while to figure out. But once I did, I was like, this is great, you know? Like, so now before studying, one thing that has become my style of studying is laying everything out and, you know, having everything ready to go. So I don't have to like reach out for stuff and then like be like, oh, wait, where's that little butterfly coming from? I've never seen that before. And then get distracted completely. So I definitely need an environment with like everything laid out and, you know, a real like study environment. Yeah. And then coming to the second part of what we talked about.
Studying with people or not with people?
Studying with people. I definitely agree with what you were saying about studying with people. Like, I think it's important to know what you're going to study, or know what you're going to talk about. Because I feel like studying with people is more about like exchanging perspectives. Like, it's not really like learning. But if you want to learn, you know, you learn on this side and you learn by yourself. And then when you're done, you need perspective on it. You need perspective to create those concept maps that we were talking about, which is when you talk to people and you're like, hey, here's what I got, what you got. And then, you know, you talk, you create connections, and you figure out what the material actually is.
That's a very good point. So how, or maybe we'll find out by the end of summer, or maybe we could even talk to somebody that maybe commutes to and from school or has always been studying at home. How do you think you're going to be studying at home this summer, Anuli, when you before had your college campus that you could be on?
Oh man, you have no idea how much I miss being in the library at college. But like I said, like, I figured out a system that works for me, which is to like, you know, have everything laid out, like not leave any kind of space for any kind of procrastination. Like, even if it's a bottle of water, like green tea that I'm going to need, like everything laid out, ready to go. So once I start studying, like, I'm in the zone, and like, that's it. And like, one thing that I've, like, I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast, is one thing that I'm learning to work with is how to keep going when you're in different states of mind. Like, you're not always going to feel like you're going to crush it, and, you know, you're going to work really hard, and you're not always feeling studious. So how do you deal with those moments? But maybe we could do a little podcast about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So shall we review what we spoke about today?
Sure. So we talked about grades in general, and we talked about how important they are. They're not the most important thing in the world, but they are pretty important. And if you feel like grades are not the highlight of your life, then what else is? So you have to figure out that what else.
Yes. Remember from the beginning of your college, high school, whatever career, if you like, keep in mind the opportunities that you are going to want available to you, and use that as a goal or as something that you could determine your grades, and if your grades are satisfactory for what you want now or what you might want in the future. And again, as Anuli just said, grades aren't everything. If you need a 3.9 out of 4.0 to get into whatever college, like, think about all of the other things that you're going to be missing out on with your time, with the time that you have, that could get you into a different college, and you have all of those experiences to back you up. And that's how you can also determine what a good grade is for you.
Definitely agree. We also talked about study habits. Now, Hannah and I talked about study habits in general. We talked about our own study habits. But I think at the bottom of it all, it's really important to figure out what works best for you. So for me, a library setting works the best. Like I could barely get work done in my room before. And with Hannah, she can get work done in her room, which is pretty magical to me, if you ask me, because I was like, I could never. But again, like it's literally what works best for you.
Mm-hmm. And know that you might always be learning how to study as you start to learn new subjects, and realize that you can't study the same way for your, biology class as you're going to have to study for your history class. There are going to be different ways of getting the message across in your mind.
Right.
And don't forget to speak with your professors.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's important to be flexible with like your studying habits, and also remember to be flexible within like the 4 years of your college career too, because like the things that work for you before might not work for you in the future, because a lot of things change, your brain changes, so maybe that's not enough for you and you need more. So remember to be able to adapt to that.
Yep. Remember to make some sort of connection with your professors. Even if you don't need them right now because your academics are the best in the class, you might need them to recommend you for something, or even recommend other classes for you to take because they'll know your interests. And it will be helpful when it comes time to maybe ask for a grade change or ask how to improve on a future assignment.
Right. Definitely. Well, that's it for this podcast, you guys. Keep watching for more such podcasts. And this has been another episode of Unscripted. I'm Anuli.
I'm Hannah. Thank you for watching.